so cute to hear people like that. It just occurred to me these people here have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so yesterday when we left off, and this is just a continuation of that, we talked about rich versus poor, socioeconomic bipolarization. So I want to transition real quickly here to a video. Okay, little YouTube video here. What's called wealth inequality in America. Okay.
There's a chart I saw recently that I can't get out of my head. A Harvard business professor and economist asked more than 5,000 Americans how they thought wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was. Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 3 20% groups, they asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution. And 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed. Not only do the bottom 20% and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans barely have any of the wealth. I mean, it's hard to even see them on the chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have. Mind-blowing. But let's look at it another way, because I find this chart kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Instead, let's reduce the 311 million Americans to just a representative 100 people. Make it simple. Here they are: teachers, coaches, firefighters, construction workers, engineers, doctors, lawyers, some investment bankers, a CEO, maybe a celebrity or two. Now let's line them up according to their wealth. Poorest people on the left, wealthiest on the right, just a steady row of folks based on their net worth. We'll color code them like we did before based on which 20% quintile they fall into. Now let's reduce the total wealth of the United States, which was roughly $54 trillion in 2009, to this symbolic pile of cash. And let's distribute it among our 100 Americans. Well, here's socialism, all the wealth of the country distributed equally. We all know that won't work. We need to encourage people to work and work hard to achieve that good old American dream and keep our country moving forward. So, here's that ideal we asked everyone about. Something like this curve. This isn't too bad. We've got some incentive, as the wealthiest folks are now about 10 to 20 times better off than the poorest Americans. But hey, even the poor folks aren't actually poor, since the poverty line has stayed almost entirely off the chart. We have a super healthy middle class with a smooth transition into wealth. And yes, Republicans and Democrats alike chose this curve. 9 out of 10 people, 92%, said this was a nice, ideal distribution of America's wealth. But let's move on. This is what people think America's wealth distribution actually looks like. Not as equitable, clearly, but for me, even this still looks pretty great. Yes, the poorest 20 to 30% are starting to suffer quite a lot compared to the ideal, and the middle class is certainly struggling more than they were, while the rich and wealthy are making roughly 100 times that of the poorest Americans, and about 10 times that of the still healthy middle class. Sadly, this isn't even close to the reality. Here is the actual distribution of wealth in America. The poorest Americans don't even register. They're down to pocket change, and the middle class is barely distinguishable from the poor. In fact, even the rich between the top 10 and 20 percentile are worse off. Only the top 10% are better off. And how much better off? So much better off that the top 2 to 5% are actually off the chart at this scale. And the top 1%, this guy, well, his stack of money stretches 10 times higher than we can show. Here's his stack of cash, restacked, all by itself.
That's socioeconomic bipolarization. Does that make sense to you? Okay.
This is the top 1% we've been hearing so much about. So much green in his pockets that I have to give him a whole new column of his own because he won't fit on my chart. 1% of America has 40% of all the nation's wealth. The bottom 80%, 8 out of every 10 people, or 80 out of these 100, only has 7% between them. And this has only gotten worse in the last 20 to 30 years. While the richest 1% take home almost a quarter of the national income today, in 1976, they took home only 9%, meaning their share of income has nearly tripled in the last 30 years. The top 1% own half the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. The bottom 50...
Like, you will hear people talk about the stock market as an economic indicator, right? But the stock market keeps going up. But the stock market keeps going up. That is only relevant if what? If I can afford to buy stock. Does that make sense? If I can't save, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, right? I have a job. I'm not talking about the unemployed. I have a job, but I can barely pay my car payment, my house payment, and my bills. Okay? Which means I'm not saving. I'm not putting money in a bank or a stock market that stays there. Does that make sense? So at that moment, it becomes irrelevant to me that the stock market's going up. Does that make sense to you? Right? So that's the issue here. You hear people say, well, the stock market's so good. Look, how many of you invest in stock? Does anybody in here have money invested in say, okay, 2, 3, 4 of it? So for you guys, it's completely irrelevant that the stock market's going up. Unless you're one of the 2 or 3 people in here that can invest. Does that make sense? So what it really comes down to then is what percentage of our population can save. Then it matters, right?
50% of Americans own only 0.5% of these investments, which means they aren't investing. They're just scraping by. I'm sure many of these wealthy people have worked very hard for their money. But do you really believe that the CEO is working 380 times harder than his average employee? Not his lowest paid employee, not the janitor, but the average earner in his company. The average worker needs to work more than a month to earn what the CEO makes in 1 hour. We certainly don't have to go all the way to socialism to find something that is fair for hardworking Americans. We don't even have to achieve what most of us consider might be ideal. All we need to do is wake up and realize that the reality in this country is not at all what we think it is.
Okay, so look, I want to be clear about this. I am not a doomsday sayer. Okay? I want to be real clear about that. I'm not telling you that the country's going to hell in a handbasket. I am not doing that. What I'm saying is that is an example of socioeconomic bipolarization. And what I'm telling you is it's unsustainable. It cannot sustain itself. It can be corrected. Okay? So I'm not being a doomsday. I'm not like, oh gosh, we're absolutely going to fall the way the Roman Empire did. I'm not saying that. Okay? What I am saying is if that's left unchecked, it's a very real problem for all the reasons we talked about yesterday. You end up with 2 different cultures functioning within the same society and they don't like each other. So like we've been talking about in current events, America's Great Divide, right? And you will hear people out there that will talk about that divide like there's going to be some sort of civil war. Have you guys heard anybody out there heard anything like that? There might be another civil war or whatever. Here's the problem with that. This is what we talked about in current events. Where's the divide? Like even with the Civil War, one of the big problems the South had is there's no geographical boundary between the North and the South. even though it was regional, there's no river that runs and separates north and south, particularly in the east. The Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi run the wrong direction. So there's no physical separation. So the north and south are Siamese twins, right? Same thing's true with us today. If there was a civil war, what would that even look like? Like, where's the line? Because the divide is between rural and urban, between black and white, between educated and not college educated, between poor and rich. So there's not like, you go on one side of the line and you get one thing, you go on the other side of the line, you get another. Does that make sense to you? So it becomes contentious that way. I don't even know what a new civil war would look like because it's not regional. Okay. So anyway, and again, I'm not saying that's going to happen because it can be corrected. But I'm just telling you, a society where you have a rich and a poor and nothing in the middle, no hope, no American dream, can't sustain itself. People will get fed up. Okay, now what it'll look like on the backside, I have no idea. But that's kind of what starts, we're not got to the fall of Rome yet, but that becomes an issue later. Now, a couple things here we want to talk about. Civil service. So, you guys ready? I created this. This is my thing. Okay, this is Binge World. Okay, what I like to call the box theory. You all have a box. We spend our whole lives trying to put stuff on our box. Okay, we want to accumulate things. So, simply put, I have, a house that I can't afford, and 3 cars that I can't afford, and a wife that I can't afford, and I have a career that pays for all this stuff, and I have dog, cat, whatever, right? You accumulate stuff, right? Now, here's my question for you. How likely is this person to be a problem for the government?
No.
Why not?
Because there's nothing really private going here. It's just a normal portfolio.
Well, think about it. Why am I likely to not stir the pot? To not cause turmoil or friction? Why is this person here, who has stuff in their box, not likely to cause turmoil or friction? It's not complicated. Think. Well, yeah, I got stuff to lose, right? If things go bad, then I got stuff to lose, right? Now, if all that disappeared, so watch this. So on 9/11, my wife's in a plane that flies into a building that contains my job. And now, because I lose my job, I can't make my house and my car payments. Dog eats the cat, and I eat the dog. Really stupid example, but you get the point. I lose everything. Now, how likely is this person to be a problem? Yeah, you got nothing to lose, right? I got nothing to lose. So when you look at civil service, okay, here's what Augustus starts civil service programs. What's a civil service program? Simply put, they are government paid jobs. Okay, that's what you see here. They are government paid jobs. Now, why do this? Well, number one, these are jobs that have to be done anyway. Okay, in Rome, the examples would be postal service. Romans had the first Pony Express. They could deliver a letter from one end of the continent to the other in 10 days. Okay, road repair, grain supply. Road repair would be what we would call today the Department of Transportation. Grain supply would be welfare services, right? Those are all examples. So they're today garbage collection, not in Hendricks County because you have a private company, Raise Trash, but if you go to Marion County, the trash is picked up by the municipality. Okay, so you have jobs that need to be done anyway, right? Number two, you give poorer people these jobs. Now you give them currency. Now you give them a way to put stuff in their box. So you create stability, right? I love the empire. Why? Because the empire does for me. We'll talk about this later. Who are you loyal to? You're loyal to whoever provides for your needs. Like you think about income. Like I love my job. I do. I want to be clear about this. I love my job. I love where I teach. I love teaching you guys. I love who I teach for and who I teach with. However, if they quit paying me, I ain't coming tomorrow. Does that make sense to you? You say, well, it's all about the kids. Yeah, it's about my kids. Can I put food on the table and a roof over their head, clothes on their back, right? But if they say, hey, I want you to do this for free. No, I like you guys, but not that much. It has nothing to do with how much I like you. I've got to put food on the table, right? So you generate loyalty that way. And this is a government doing that. These jobs have to be done. We can give typically civil service jobs in that day and age, which are poorer classes of people. It gives them stuff to put in their box, and now they're loyal to the emperor and the empire for providing for them. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay. Then the last thing we're going to talk about today. Leave my picture down here. I get really tired of looking at myself. Now I know how you guys feel. Man, that dude is ugly. At least I have a mask to help. Stop shaking your head. It's not right. It makes me feel worse than I already do about myself. These are damaging my body self-image. Okay, so the last thing here is the paterfamilias. Okay, the Roman family. How was it constructed? So the paterfamilias, Latin phrase that literally means father of the family. Okay, the title given to the eldest male in the household. Eldest male, who may or may not be your father, right? Could be your grandpa or your uncle or whatever, okay? Now, this person's control over their household was dictatorial. They had absolute control over every person in their household, okay? They could buy or sell any member of their household into slavery. They were the high priest, they were spokesmen of the family, and they had complete control over the life or death of someone in their household. So you could be, the paterfamilias could put you to death if they wanted to. Now, how many of you have ever talked back to your parents? Okay, would you talk back to your parents if you thought they could pull out a gun, shoot you, and nothing would happen to them? Probably not, right? Now, I always get a couple people like, it still would. You would once. And I would submit to you, no, you wouldn't, because the reason you do is because it's tolerated. You ever heard the expression, you get what you tolerate? Okay? If you grew up in an environment where that wasn't tolerated, do you think it would change your personality? If you change enough personalities, you change the culture. Does that make sense to you? So let me give you, I always tell this story every year. It's a perfect example of this. So you guys are all aware of generational differences, right? And you're going to do the same thing. Everybody thinks their childhood was better and whatever. You're going to do the same thing. 40 years from now, you're like, I can't. Okay? So everybody thinks that. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to argue better or worse, but it is different. Whether it's better or worse is a subject for debate. Okay? So my dad, who passed away last December, passed away, he was just a month short of being 90. So he was born in 1930. Okay? Grew up during the Great Depression. So that is a backdrop, okay? Pre-TV, right? So every Sunday, they used to have company over after church. This is my dad's version of the story, by the way. Okay? And they had company over, and they would have dinner, and then the kids would go out and play in the yard, and the adults would sit, either in the house or on the porch and talk and socialize, right? Pre-telephone, pre-TV, pre-internet. You guys with me? Okay, so my grandma, his mom, goes up to him and says, don't ask for any more food than I give you, because we got to make sure we have enough for everybody, and it's the Great Depression, right? So don't ask for any more food than I give you. Dad says, okay. So company comes over, they have dinner, kids go outside and play, adults are socializing in the living room. There's a piece of chicken left. Dad's still hungry. He goes to my grandma. And he says, Mom, can I have the last piece of chicken? She says, sure. So he goes in there and he eats it. Hour later, company leaves. Grandma goes to my dad and says, go out in the yard and choose. Choose what? Choose the stick I'm going to whip your behind with. For what? What did I do? She says, the chicken. He said, you told me I could have the chicken. She goes, no, I told you not to ask. You were in trouble when you asked. So go get the stick, and if it breaks, I get to pick the next one. That was the world my dad grew up in. Now, do you think that shaped his personality? Okay, what do you think my childhood was like?
A little better?
A little. Now, again, guys, I'm not insinuating that this is okay. We evolve, right? I mean, I know we live in Dr. Phil's world of don't spank your children. I can just tell you, I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I'm just saying I got whooped. I never thought it was child abuse. But if I did something wrong, I was scared of my dad. Now, I loved him, but he's crazy. I do. I love to this day. I love my dad. But I'm telling you, if I got out of pocket, it was on like Donkey Kong. So, people always say, I didn't get in a tremendous amount of trouble in school. Why not? Because I was afraid of that crazy dude. Okay? And now, I'm not going to pretend to be you. Okay? But I don't know what your childhood is like. I just know that the environment that you're raised in, whatever it is, has an impact on how you develop as a person and what you think you're allowed to do and not. Now, people who grew up in these strict environments like the Romans did, what kind of qualities do you think that would breed in a person? Good and bad. Yeah. Very disciplined. Rule follower, right? Don't question authority. It's gravitas. Groundedness, weightedness, seriousness, right? Don't question authority, follow the rules. I'm telling you, that's me. I'm not a drama person. I don't gripe a whole lot about stuff. Boss says to jump, I ask how high. If I don't like it, I close the door, have a conversation with that person. I don't go, I'm not whiny, that is not me. I don't go complain. Complaints go uphill, not down. I don't go, like I always tell our basketball team, you got a problem with somebody, sit down and talk to them. Why are you talking to her about the problem you have with her? That's just drama queen stuff. Cowards walk away. I say that all day. If I get on kid in practice and they turn and walk away, I don't yell at the back of his head. That's not how cowards walk away. You want a problem solved, look me in the eye. Okay, that's me. Okay. Now, having said that, what would be the negative aspects of being raised in that environment? What might that kind of strict environment stifle? Might stifle creativity, right? Sometimes it's good to break the rules, isn't it? Stretch boundaries. But when that's not valued, you get a different kind of person, right? Like I will also tell you, I have this phase in my life where I don't like to fail. I don't like fixing stuff at home. I'm just using myself as an example. Because to fix stuff, you got to break it before you make it better. And I don't like to work backwards. Okay? And I think a lot of that has to do with my upbringing. I will tell you this. My dad, one time we're driving down 65. He's probably in his mid to late 60s. My nephew pipes up, who's in high school, your guys' age at the time, probably about sophomore, pipes up and says something smart aleck. My dad grabs the steering, I'm driving, grabs the steering wheel, yanks it over across 2 lanes of traffic into the shoulder, pulls the keys out of the ignition, gets out of the car, opens the door, grabs my nephew out of the back, throws him on the ground, says, let's go. He's like 68. My nephew's your age. He was going to knock him out right there on the side of the road. Now, you've met my dad. Okay? He'd give you the shirt off his back. He's the sweetest, most lovable person. I know I'm making him sound like this really, that's not 98% of the time. Tremendous human being. I'm just saying there are rules to him that if you broke those rules, he wasn't going to mess around with you. Would you please not talk to me like that? That was not my dad. You knew that about him. Okay? But he would also he would do anything for anyone. He would give you the shirt off his back if he thought it made your life better. He cared about people. But he didn't mess around. When there were rules, there were rules. Okay? And so that, and I'm not, again, insinuating better or worse. I'm just saying that's the environment these people grew up in. And it has long-term consequences. Okay? In terms of why Rome becomes what it becomes. It's a very disciplined, grounded, driven society in a lot of ways, but also very dictatorial, very brutal to outsiders. There's, it's a yin and yang, right? Now, what starts the downfall to Rome? And we're not going to get into this today. This is a whole other thing tomorrow. The development of Christianity in that regard is very important. Because as Christianity begins to develop within the Roman Empire, and it begins to spread over time, you can actually track the rise of Christianity and the decline of the Roman Empire. They're almost synonymous with each other because Rome grows a conscience. You can't be Christian and follow the paterfamilias' mold of raising people. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So Rome's value systems begin to change. Again, not arguing better or worse, I'm just saying they're different. And as those value systems change, so does Rome change itself. Okay? So we talked about a couple of, as we talked about, rich and poor, and sort of the classes within Rome. If that division widens, you have a contributing factor to the fall of Rome. Christianity, as its scope widens, you have a contributing factor to the fall of Rome, and they are numerous. Okay. Questions on anything? Okay, so here's what you're looking at tomorrow: Christianity. Thursday, the fall of Rome. Friday, test. And I will not be here on Friday. You'll be taking a test by the sun. Okay. Questions? Peace.